Welcome everyone and welcome to today's video. We are at Road America for the first race of the new season, the 2022 season, and we are in F3 fixed. Now, I'm gonna cut to the chase here, guys. This setup is not very good. It's actually shocking, I'm not gonna lie. I think whoever put this setup together forgot that Road America actually has corners, because there is no downforce on this car. There is so little wing on the front or back that it goes like a rocket ship down the straights, but that middle sector or any corner, it's like Bambi on ice. It's really difficult. The only time I was able to really get any pace out of the car was when it just had little fuel in it, because I could actually kind of throw it relatively could throw it round corners, but God, if it had any sort of fuel in it, it was just a no-go. So this lap time was with quite low fuel. I did a 58.7. I could have got a little bit lower than that, but in all honesty, it would have been pushing really hard, and it was difficult enough as it was. I mean, this lap, you'll see there's areas I could have made up time and I could have taken corners a bit better, but overall, I think the fix series this week is just going to be about survival, guys. If you keep it on the black stuff, you're going to pick up safety rating and you're going to pick up iRating. But anyway, we're going to jump into it. That's what this track guide's all about, for me to let you know what these setups are like and how we are going to navigate this track. So as always, it is going to be a hot lap from the cockpit view, then a far chase camera angle, and then we're going to talk through that lap and see how we put it together. But yeah, let's head into it. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and enjoy. So there we are, guys. That was the hot lap from cockpit and far chase camera angle. Now, just before we analyse this lap as we're running down the start to finish straights, I just want to let you guys know about my brake bias. I always drop the brake bias back a few clicks as 55.5, which is the fixed setup standard, is always too far forward. I dropped it back to 54.1 this time around. Do that with what you may. That is entirely down to your discretion as a base. Play around with it, see what works for you. Track temperature was 26 degrees, and that's relatively cool for Road America. Normally it's scorching hot here. We're looking at temperatures in the high 30s to low 40s. So nice to have a little bit more grip, but unfortunately this setup is not really what we want for this track temperature, because it is just way too slippery. It's a very different way that we have to drive this car with this setup due to the lack of downforce. I still don't know if it's a mistake from iRacing's part. Part of me thinks it is, and they've got a Le Mans setup on it, or a Monza setup, because Road America has a lot of corners. It's nearly a 2-minute lap, so for them not to have hardly any downforce is quite baffling. But let's get back to the lap at hand. So we're down into the first corner, and we've got these cones on the left hand side. These are our braking markers, which are different obviously to our standard board markers. But what we're keeping an eye out for is the second lot of cones here further up, the 3 number cones. And what we're going to do, we're going to brake halfway between those set of cones and the last cone here, which leads up to the fast right-hander. And now we're going to be braking in a straight line, shifting down into fourth there just before we get to the corner. And you can see I'm just starting to turn in as I've got to this curb on the left-hand side. You should always, guys, be looking to the apex and through the exit of the corner, but this will be in your peripheral vision, and you can use this as a turning point if be it. But really, I start turning in as I see the apex come into view. So we're going to slowly move it on, and you can see here I'm trail braking through the corner, because as this doesn't have a lot of downforce, I'm having to control the front end of the car. I'm trying to get the nose of the car pointing into the apex, and the only way to do that is to trail brake and manage the weight transfer. If I just allow this car to run through the corner here without any trail braking, I will just run out of tarmac and I'll run out into the gravel. That's the problem with this setup throughout the lap, and why the open setup side of the series is probably going to be more enjoyable this week. That's from a personal preference. Some people may enjoy the challenge of this, but this seems a little bit too extreme for my liking. But we'll move it on, and as you can see, I'm still a little bit wide of the apex. In an ideal world, you want 2 wheels on this curb. There is grip there, and it just allows you to cover a little, as just not as much track basically. And you can see here, as we're about halfway round, I'm coming off the brake onto the throttle. Not as early as I would like, but as best as we can do. Opening up the steering and getting 2 wheels on the red and yellow curb on the left hand side. Now you can use this little bit of concrete, shall we say, it was concrete runoff, but it is very bumpy there. It unsettles the car quite a bit. It's quite difficult to, if you run out here, to come straight back on track and not run out of track. This doesn't last very long at all. Before you know it, you've run out of concrete, and you've got grass in front of you. So it does. If you've got someone directly behind you, or if you're chasing someone and you run out wide here, it is going to affect you traveling down into the next corner and trying to line up an overtake. So ideally be inside the curb, or on the curb, the red and the yellow curb, and we run down into the a very important corner here. This corner is important because it sets up the second long straight on this track and probably prime overtaking opportunity. First corner is is one of those prime overtaking opportunities, but this one, because it leads down into the, I'm going to call it a hairpin. It's a very kind of like a 90-degree left-hander. This is the prime. This sets up the prime overtaking opportunity in the draft down into the hairpin down the hill. So we're just going to slow it down here, downhill, and you have to be careful about locking up a tyre here. It's very easy to brake too late, lock up the fronts because the weight is on the nose of the car, and you'll see people run out of tarmac. That's one good thing about Road America. While it's not necessarily a conventional track for F3, it's one of the tracks that has grass all around it and gravel, and it does punish you if you're obviously too wild. So as we just play it down, you can see here the one marker on the left hand side, or there's a couple of white lines in the middle of the track here. So you can see this one here. This is normally the line that we brake upon when we're in GT3 cars or LMP2 cars, things like that. But we don't brake there. We don't brake that far after it, but we brake a little way after it. Not quite halfway between 2 and 1, but once the number 2 has gone out of your view on the left hand side, that's when you want to start braking. Stand over to the left hand side to open up the right hander, braking in a straight line and shifting down into third. And once again, as you see the apex come into view, that's when you want to start turning. If you want a visual representation, you can use the shadow of the trees here, but be careful that shadows do disappear when the sun goes behind the clouds, which is a thing in iRacing. Start turning in, making the use of trail braking once again to control the nose of the car, get it pointing in. And then as you get to the corner, you want to be getting onto the throttle. We want our 2 wheels on this red and white curb, not too far over. We ideally want it on the left hand side of the red and white curb. And then you can see I'm feathering the throttle here. I'm about half throttle. If I had more downforce, I would be on full throttle at this point because I know that I have the grip round the corner. It's not that I don't have the grip in the tyres, it's the fact that I don't have just pure downforce. And you can see here, it's only when I get round and properly exit the corner that I'm able to get on full throttle. Once again, using the curb on the left hand side as a runoff. Yes, you can use this, but it's very, very bumpy. And especially at the end here, it's almost like you hit a dip. There's a dip here and it really unsettles the car. And in extreme cases, you can spin. And in most cases, you're going to lose a lack of speed running down this long straight and leave yourself vulnerable to an overtake or not being close enough to the person in front to make one. But we're then going to play this in full speed, full throttle all the way down the hill, and then we're going to pause it here because we can now see the bald markers on our right hand side. So we have 3, 2 and 1, which the antenna is currently covering. And what we want to be keeping an eye out for, guys, is the 2 marker. That is our braking point. So you can see I'm just starting to come off the throttle here, and my foot is about to apply pressure to the brake. As you can see, nearly dead on in line with it. And we're going to brake in a straight line, hugging the right hand side. You can get your car over this red and white curb, but I found it can kind of suck the car in, almost like train tracks, and then it makes it quite difficult to get your car turning into the hairpin here or the sharp left-hander. And then once again, as we see the apex starting to come into view, that's when we turn in. It's a second gear corner. We're changing down into second gear. If you change into first, you're going to get too much engine braking. The revs are going to be too high, and you might possibly spin it under braking, which of course we don't want. But you can see here I'm just managing the brake again, controlling the nose of the car, and we want to get 2 wheels over the curb. Now you can get 2 wheels in here. There's like a little dip and it won't be an off track, but it is a severe dip that your car will bottom out and you'll lose a lot of speed and just leave yourself vulnerable into what is still a sneaky overtaking opportunity. I like to call this as the sneaky overtaking opportunity up this hill here, because if you're brave on the brakes, you can get it on the inside. In some extreme cases, you can hang it around the outside. In this setup, I'm going to tell you guys to not do that around the outside, because you just won't have the grip to probably stick it. If you do, I tip my cap to you, but it's a very, very risky move. So if you get the run on someone up here, if they outbrake themselves or lock up, this corner at the start of the race, guys, please just be so careful. Give everyone a wide berth. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've come down to this corner, first lap or even first couple of laps, and my race has ended by someone outbraking themselves because they don't realise they've got an extra 10 miles an hour or 10 kilometres an hour in speed through the draft. They brake on their point like normal and they lock up the tyres and just use you as a battering ram, and they drive off into the distance happy as Larry, and you're ended up in the barrier. So yeah, please don't do that. Just pull your braking zone in a little bit until the field kind of spreads out, or you know that you're comfortable on the brakes, because it's going to be carnage here this week. People are going to do it no matter what I say and what other people say, but if you be wary, then hopefully people get the gist as well around you. But as we said, managing the brake around the corner here, trail braking, getting on the throttle just as we get to the apex. Once again, not on full throttle though, because we've got quite a lot of steering input. If we did, then the car would just spin. Open up the steering, and then this little bit of concrete here, if you'd like to call it that, I'm going to call it concrete or rumble strip. You can use this as a runoff. It's actually quite nice and flat, a little bit of an up and down, but you don't lose any speed. So you can use that, and that's a nice little runoff there. This corner up here, up the hill, is a little bit tricky. I don't like this corner at the best of times, let alone in this setup. So what we want to do is, just before we get to the top of the hill, just before we get to the crest and go over it, we want to brake here, as you can see, and we're going to shift down from third to second. Now be careful, because I have noticed that when shifting down into third, the car really does pull up and the rear gets a bit wiggly. So if you're too sharp on the brakes and not really paying attention, you could lose the rear under braking there and shifting down into third. I personally didn't do it, but it was just something that I noticed with this setup. Once again, due to the lack of downforce that we've got. If you want to think of a braking marker, you can use these boards on the right hand side, that as you get to the last radical board, start braking. I personally it's just a feel thing here. There's no visual reference that I'm picking out. The only visual reference is the big Corvette bridge. I make sure that I shift before that into third and then into second. As we slow it down, turn in. Now here I did turn in a little bit too early and I got on the grass, didn't get an off track, so I did lose a bit of time here. I should have been a little bit wider and had 2 wheels on the red and yellow curb again. That's the perfect line. And then keeping 2 wheels on the red and yellow curb on the exit. All these curbs and runoffs have these concrete runoffs. That's what I'm going to continue calling them. But this one here is actually quite bumpy. They're not all the same. Unlike the previous corner where it was not too bad, this one's very bumpy. And I've seen people go out here and spin purely just as they get the throttle down. The rears just spin up because the chassis is just bumping up and down like that. So just be wary. And then we're moving the car over to the left hand side. Full throttle round here, making sure you get your wheels over the red and yellow curb. Even with the lack of downforce, we can take that in full throttle. Then we're over to the right hand side, and what we're keeping an eye out for is the 2 marker. We're going to brake there in a straight line again. Always want to be braking in a straight line. If you brake hard while turning, you will spin the car. Second gear, turn in, trail braking once again to manage the nose of the car. Really have to do a lot of trail braking around here just to control that entry and get that turn in. And then we want our wheels to be on the red and yellow curb. There will be a little bit of a dip there if you go too far over to the left. Then we're back on the throttle. And just be careful here, guys, getting on the throttle too early. It's very easy to do. And using this runoff, as you can see, it kind of slopes away to the right. And more often than not, you rejoin the track from the grass and the gravel. That means your tyres get dirty, which is going to leave you a bit vulnerable for grip or lack of grip into the long right hander, and it's also an off track as well, so just be careful. And in extreme cases, people rejoin here and they spin it and end up in the tyres on the left hand side. We're going to play it round, and this is a corner, so we're moving over to the left hand side, and you want to start turning in as you get under the bridge. So as you see this kind of access road here, that's when you then want to start turning in. And this corner, unfortunately, is where you lose a lot of time in this setup compared to the open setups. Open setups can take this full throttle, the downforce just sucks the car into the ground, and it's a joyful corner to go around. In this setup, unfortunately, not so much. So we're going to maintain 5th gear, and we want to try and keep it tight round here. Not too tight, but tight enough. We don't want to allow the car to drift over to the left. And then as we get about halfway round, we're going to lift off the throttle. Now, I did dab the brakes slightly. I think it needs this. And remember, this is even with low fuel. If you have full fuel at the start and cold tyres, this is just going to be a treacherous corner. I can just see a big pile up of Formula 3 cars on the left-hand side here. But you can see I'm not even half throttle here, trying to keep the nose of the car tight and in, covering as little track as possible, and then I get on the throttle. So I get on the throttle as a visual reference as I'm coming to the end of the green barrier on the right hand side. Even then, I'm not able to keep the car tight to the apex. It's just drifting. Open up the steering, and then it is full throttle from here all the way down into the next corner. So you're over to the left, opening up the corner, tight to the apex, covering as little track as possible. And running it down all the way into the right-hander. Canada corner, as they call it. You'll probably hear Jim from Crew Chief go, "Someone's off at Canada corner," all too often. And the carousel back there, guys, the carousel corner, I think they call it, that's what I'm going to call it, is important as well. It's an important corner because it sets up this whole run down into Canada corner. So if you can keep it nice and tight through there, anyone who kind of drifts out wide, you'll then be able to draft them down into this corner. But what you don't want to do is lock up the brakes. Now this corner is famous for people locking up their brakes and just running the car off and ended up in the barriers at the end, just going straight on. So what we're keeping an eye out for is the free marker on the left hand side. Now in the open setups, you'll probably brake a little bit later because, as I said, you've got more downforce. You can turn in comfortably into this corner, whereas we need to guide it through here. So as you can see, we've just got the free marker go past our view, braking in a straight line down into third gear, and then we start to turn in at the 1 marker. But you should always be looking at the apex and through the apex. And we trail brake and get the nose through and get the 2 wheels on our right hand side on the red and yellow curb. And then once we get on that curb and we know we're about halfway round it, we can then get on the throttle, as you can see. Open up the steering. You can use this runoff here, that's fine. Tight to the right hand side. Now this corner, I'm just going to pause it here, guys. I take this flat out here, but I've got temperature in the tyres and I haven't got hardly any fuel. I've been open in saying that. When you've got a full tank of fuel, or you've got even more fuel, I think it was even half a tank, I could not take this full throttle. You had to have a little lift. No need to use the brake, but a lift is required. Here, I believe I go full throttle. Yeah, so same principle. You turn in at the same point, just as we move it back, as we get to the end of the curb, and you can just start to see the crest of the left-hander and the apex. Open up the steering. See, if you have a full tank of fuel, or a lot more fuel to say the least, you'll just run out of track here and end up on the grass, and it's very difficult to try and maintain control of this car when you go on the grass out there. It's difficult at the best of times, but let alone when you go out there. It seems to be more treacherous than anywhere else. Then we're moving the car over to the left hand side for what is also a very, very important corner, because this sets up your whole run down the main straight, the start finish straight. One of 3 proper overtaking opportunities, one of the 3 big ones. Now the car is over to the left hand side. Normally we, in our GT3 cars or in our LMP2 cars, etc., we are braking on this white line here, the free marker. Now I'm never usually looking at the board markers, I'm looking at the lines in the track, because these are a little bit too far out of my vision, even in VR. So what we want to be keeping an eye out for is the next line, the number 2 line. And just as we get to this, or just as it kind of is in front of our nose, that's when we want to start to brake. Now, I will admit, I think I broke a tad too early here, and I could have been a little bit braver and broke a little bit closer to that white line, but that is pretty much what we're aiming for. Shifting down into third gear, stand over to the left, not getting onto this concrete here because it can kind of suck the car in, and yeah, you just miss the apex. Little bit of trail braking, once again, controlling the nose of the car, getting it pointed in. And then as you can see there, before we've even got to the corner, I'm getting on the throttle. That's really important, guys. Try and learn to do that if you can. If you have a look at your throttle inputs, look at them back and see how early you're getting on the throttle, because that's how the guys overtake you here, is that they power out of this last apex and just whiz by you in that draft. Draft is powerful around here, and you can see 2 wheels over the red and yellow curb. Just managing the throttle until I get round the corner. I know I can get on the throttle and not run out of track. Even then, I did cut it a bit fine here, as you will see, and you'll be able to see in the fire chase camera angle, as you can see here. This is allowed. It's not an off track. I can use this much runoff, but I am very, very close to that gravel and that grass. Quickly back onto track, and there we go. Full throttle now, to the start finish line. And that, guys, is a lap around Road America in a very low downforce car. Quite impressed with that. 58.7. There's a bit of time there to be gained, but the fixed series this week is going to be about survival, not so much about speed. It's going to be about consistency and keeping it on the black stuff, because it is a treacherous setup, especially at the start of a race with cold tyres, full tank of fuel. You've got there's going to be lockups galore and spins galore this week in the fixed setup. Definitely I'm much looking forward to the open setup series this week, because it's got more downforce. Who knows, this may have been a mistake from iRacing. It seems like it's a mistake. It's quite some way off. The fixed setups were really good last week. They have done it. Hopefully it may be, it may not, but yeah, this is what we have to deal with to start the week off anyway. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Remember to hit me up in the comments. Feel free to join my Discord, link is in the description below. And yeah, as always, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.